Protests turned destructive in downtown Seattle tonight. Here's what we know as of 10 o'clock. Protests started at about noon today in Seattle, but turned destructive right around 4 p.m. when someone lit a Seattle police cruiser on fire. Since then, we have seen widespread looting.
I was waiting to respond to fight vehicle fires. I want you to know I have a duty to keep our firefighters safe. And we're waiting to extinguish these fires until we can actually get in and do the good work. And that's why I think it's important our partnership with SPD and the escorts that they have been providing us throughout the day and throughout the evening. I also want to end with reminding those who are starting fires in the downtown area that they have very many unintended consequences. You may be hurt, those protesting may be hurt, those who live, visit, and work here or maybe here right now may be hurt. Businesses are lost and destroyed because of these fires. They spread very quickly, as you've seen on the news around the nation. Additionally, when you block streets, you're blocking our routes for our EMS emergency vehicles. As you heard Chief Cordner say, people have been injured. It has been difficult to get to those who are injured. As you're moving the railings around and the trees and everything else, you're blocking access routes to get people help. And that could be you too.
So we saw at least 4 police vehicles, perhaps as many as 8 in all, destroyed by fires this afternoon.
You may be having a spiritual awakening, and chances are you probably don't know what the heck is happening to you behind the scenes.
Greenville, South Carolina grocery store employee Brandon Rollins was going about a day like any other when he saw an opportunity to help. A frail, elderly customer half his size was making her way into the parking lot, and Brandon went out of his way to make sure she got where she was going safely. He took her by the hand and walked alongside her, not knowing that a customer was watching and shooting heartwarming video. Bo Graff posted his video to Facebook, where it quickly went viral. The Oakland Cougars and Logan Township Lions met for a game of youth football in 2013. The Cougars coach brought out a trick play he had been working on for some time. In fact, he had collaborated on it with the head coach of the other team. This might sound a bit unusual, but the whole plan revolved around a very unusual and very determined player. 10-year-old Jacob Steiner was a special needs student that had been taken under the wing of the coach and the entire football team. He had been playing in games all season long, but on this play you could see that the opposing players, with as much subtlety as they could muster, all allow themselves to be blocked, run the wrong way, or just fall down without being touched, all to make sure Jacob could know what it feels like to score a touchdown in a game, an experience he will certainly never forget.
Pedophilia, blasphemy, so blaspheming also is at the level of apathy. Grief, 75 to 100, you have Hugo Chavez, the Venezuelan dictator who passed on in 2013. Homelessness as a consequence of society. North Korea as a nation is at that level. 100 to 125, you have fear. The idea of eugenics, racism, nihilism, the attitude of the end justifies the means, causes a lot of problems. Addiction to criticising things. We all know people like that who just everything is a negative. They're probably operating at this point between 125. That would be fear. So 125 to 150, you've got desire. Fascism as a concept. Theory of the Big Bang, which means it's false. The philosophy of Karl Marx, dialectical materialism. Prostitution. Passivity, being passive in the world. L. Ron Hubbard, who is the founder of Scientology. I believe he fell. I think he was higher than that, and I think his consciousness level fell. So then between 150 and 175, we have anger. That's critical theory, anti-Semitism, communism as a government, vanity. Hermann Goering, that's the Nazi German military war leader. He would have to be very angry, of course. And then you've got between 175 and 200, you're up into pride, which is where a lot of people are. So you have Hollywood, gambling, the United Nations as an organisation. That's an interesting one. Atheism, heavy metal music, the collective colleges and universities across the West. That's another big one because they're below the level of courage, which we're going to touch on in a minute. Noam Chomsky, Vladimir Putin, and George Soros. That's another interesting one, George Soros, because some people hold him in high regard as a god. Other people think that he's the devil reincarnate. He's probably somewhere in between, as with anything, but he's below the level of 200. Now, the level of 200 is the first major development of consciousness. So 200 is the level of courage. It represents a profound shift from destructive and harmful behavior to life-promoting and integrous lifestyles. Using kinesiology, everything below 200 makes your body go weak, which proves falsity. There's no truth in it, or little truth. Anything above 200 allows the body to remain strong. So currently, approximately 78% of the world's population is below 200, meaning 22% is above that level. Because of the logarithmic nature of consciousness, one person at level 600 counterbalances 10 million people below 200. So in essence, enlightened beings at higher levels of consciousness stop humanity from destroying itself, essentially. That's an important thing to know. So the level at 200 is the point of falsity moving into truthhood. So when Dr. David Hawkins said to discern between truth and falsity, the level of 200 is that barrier. So a few examples between 200 and 250. We have Warren Buffett, ancient Rome, the internet, elephants, the animal obviously, Qigong, and free speech as a concept is at between 200 and 250. 250 to 310 is neutrality. So there we'd have ancient Greece, Hatha Yoga, calisthenics, the exercise, ancient Atlantis, which is an interesting one, and socialism as a system. 310 to 350, we've got willingness. We've got Voltaire, the French philosopher, capitalism, Scandinavia as a whole. This is also important, this level 310 to 350 willingness, this is the level of consciousness needed to overcome addiction. Okay, so you can go to all the therapy in the world, but if the therapist and you are not at the level of willingness, 310 to 350, you will not overcome that addiction. Okay, that's an important thing. So 350 to 400, we have the level of acceptance. That's forgiveness. Theosophy, that's Helena Blavatsky, she founded Theosophy. Great body of work, highly recommended. The Salvation Army, equality as a concept. Sam Walton, who started Walmart, and Pablo Picasso, the artist, is between the level of 350 and 400, which is acceptance. 400 to 500, we have reason. I believe I'm between these. Intellect with a dualistic logic under the assumption of a personal separate self. Okay, so this is very much of the mind, of the self with a small s, not a big S. But this is where we have the sciences of mathematics, materialist science, rationality, democracy. Rudolf Steiner was at this level, the German philosopher and mystic. Milton Friedman, I think he was Austrian, capitalist philosopher as well. Ayn Rand, who gets a lot of stick. George Hegel, the philosopher. JFK, John F. Kennedy. R. Buckminster Fuller. Galileo, Darwin, John Locke, Thomas Sowell, he's still alive, great guy from America. Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, Sigmund Freud. It's very important to know that this is the level of the Newtonian paradigm of the world, based on the principle of causality, cause and effect. Okay, beyond this level, cause and effect as a concept begins to dissolve. Everything happens by virtue of what it is. There is nothing causing anything else. So at the level of 500, which is the level of love, in the real sense of the word, not the worldly sense seen in Hollywood. Love in this context is a way of being. It's not something you do, you are that way, you be that way. So according to Dr. Hawkins, the reason the level of love is so difficult to achieve is because our ego, which is quite strong between 400 and 500 because it's information gathering, is so rooted in the physical domain as opposed to the spiritual domain, which begins to emerge properly at the level of 500. So the 500s represent a difficult hurdle. According to Dr. Hawkins, only 4% of the world's population calibrate above this level. It denotes a shift from the linear, provable, Newtonian paradigm to the non-linear, formless spiritual realm. Of course, people operating below this level of consciousness see people above this level as mystical and perhaps in the clouds somewhat. But that's because they're seeing the world with a different lens by operating at a higher or lower level of consciousness, depending on which side of the coin. So at the big hurdle of 500, we see the following, which is love, right? We see Gnosis, which is mystical knowledge, Kundalini Yoga, the pyramids as a structure, Machu Picchu, Lourdes in France, the religious place. Lots of healing goes on there. The founding fathers of the US as a collective, David Bohm, the physicist, Carl Gustav Jung, psychoanalyst, Helen Keller, the American author and activist, and Mozart. 540 to 600, we have joy and unconditional love. So at 540, we move into unconditional love, which is another big step up, and where we actually begin to move into non-duality, which is to say there is no other, all is one. So here is devotion, surrender, the Book of Kells, which is a Gaelic or Scottish book, Stonehenge in Glastonbury in the UK, the White Brotherhood, which is like a spiritual community. There's a lot of writings about those, check those out. Confucius, Leonardo da Vinci, Thomas Aquinas, Rumi, the Sufi poet, Jacob Bohm, the German mystic. Okay, so you get the point. These are like starting to become far more enlightened beings now, okay? So 600 to 700, we have the level of peace. This is a surrender to divinity. Kinesiology as a tool as well. That is between the level of 600 and 700, showing there's a lot of truth in it. The Kabbalah, the Jewish mystical scriptures. Swami Vivekananda, the Indian guru. Lao Tzu. Self as existence. The sentiment of I am, which is Sri Ramana Maharshi. He taught, that was his big philosophy, Advaita Vedanta, I am. Often used by, the yogis of the Vedanta lineage. It's not difficult to find that now. It's all over YouTube or books. There are also a couple of mantras which are mentioned at this level. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, which is a Hindu mantra, and Om Mani Padme Hum, which is a Buddhist mantra. You can meditate on those things. And then we move on to the stage of enlightenment, which is between 700 and 1000. The map of consciousness itself is between 700 and 1000. Okay, universal rights, which is the right for freedom, the right for free thinking and free expression. That's a universal right. That's between 700 and 1000. Sufism, mystical Islam, Zen Buddhism, Hinayana Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, the Zohar, which is a Jewish mystical scripture based on the Kabbalah, the Bhagavad Gita, the Lamsa translation of the Bible, Karma Yoga, which is selfless service, Raja Yoga, the Upanishads, the Vedas, Om as a name of God, a few people, Master Eckhart, the Christian mystic, Sri Ramana Maharshi, Indian guru, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, I can never pronounce that one, Adi Shankara, Mahatma Gandhi, Huang Po, who's a Chinese Zen master. So all these figures throughout history, these enlightened beings, they'll be between 700 and 1000. The reason that we still know of them today is because of their level of consciousness at that time. At 1,000, the highest in this domain, we have, as you can probably imagine, Zoroaster, Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, and statements such as consciousness is the irreducible stratum of all that exists. Life cannot be destroyed, it can only change form, and creation and evolution are one and the same reality. So those three comments also operate at level 1,000. Big one there, creation and evolution are one and the same reality. If you listen to one of my previous videos, I did sort of say that until science and spirituality put creation and evolution in the same basket, then we're going to be having troubles forever between science and spirituality. There you go. So that is it for the walkthrough of the map of consciousness.